Welcome back to the Iowa Crossroad Podcast. This is your host, Max Pringle. Tonight I've decided to do something a little different, so let me know how this goes. Never done the video before, but I decided that this is important because today there was a subcommittee that was canceled, and the subcommittee was on a pro-life bill, House File 2332, which we'll get into in a little bit. But the subcommittee was canceled, which means that effectively in the state of Iowa, the pro-life legislative session is dead. Any pro-life bills are dead outside of the chemical abortion bill. But I want to get into it because there's a lot of things that I think that you would be interested in knowing. So last week, February 6th through the 10th, the Abolitionist Rising group, of course, a group that is for total abolition of abortion, just wrapped up their week-long Justice Alone conference here in Des Moines, Iowa. On February 6th, the first day of this conference, two bills were filed. House File 2316 was filed by 8 representatives, and for the rest of the sake, I'm going to say this is the abolitionist bill. This bill was an act relating to the treatment of an unborn child for the purposes of damages for wrongful death, homicide, and related crimes and assault, making penalties applicable and including effective date and applicability provisions. That's the description of the bill that you can find on the Iowa Legislative website. The other bill was a life at conception bill. So the previous bill, House File 2316, was a fertilization bill. This next bill was a conception bill, life at conception. But both bills were assigned to the Judiciary Committee, where Representative Steve Holt is the chairman. 24 representatives filed the life at conception bill, House File 2332. This bill was an act relating to an elective abortion and feticide, providing penalties and including effective dates. Well, both of those bills' descriptions sound very similar, but they have very different meanings. So what's the difference between these two bills? Well, the first bill, House File 2316, would have made any taking of human life after fertilization, it would have counted as homicide, and it would have held all parties that committed such an act as guilty of homicide. The second bill did not go as far. The second bill did not call out fertilization as the previous bill did, and the Iowa Republicans are in favor of in vitro fertilization, so that's why they couldn't put that life at fertilization in their file 2332. The second bill also did not have legal ramifications of homicide for the mother. The first bill was assigned to the Judiciary Committee and has not been scheduled for the subcommittee. The second bill was filed on the same day, February 6th, and it had a subcommittee schedule for this morning, February 17th at 8:30. But on February 16th, the chairman of the subcommittee, Representative Dunwell, which was also one of the sponsors for House File 2332, decided to cancel the subcommittee. He did not approve of the current landscape, we'll say. So I want you to take a look at this. This is John Dunwell, and this is his public statement that he issued after canceling the subcommittee. This is what he says. After careful consideration, I have decided to cancel the upcoming subcommittee hearing on the Life at Conception Act. While I remain deeply committed to protecting life from the moment of conception, the current legislative landscape and timing are not optimal for our caucus to advance this measure effectively this session. I'll come back to that. That's kind of an interesting statement. Instead, I believe our most urgent and achievable priority right now is to focus the full energy and resources of the caucus on passing strong legislation to crack down on the dangerous black market flow of abortion pills into our state. These unregulated chemical abortion drugs not only pose serious health risks to women through complications like severe bleeding, infection, and other emergencies, but also illegally take the life of the unborn child in a way that bypasses our state's protection for the preborn life. Addressing this immediate threat is both timely and critical to safeguarding the health and safety of Iowa women while upholding the sanctity of unborn life. I look forward to working closely with my colleagues to move this important bill forward and protect Iowans from the harm of this illicit market. Well, now that's interesting because the current legislative cycle has a trifecta, has a Republican governor, has a Republican Senate, and a Republican House. And he's saying that the caucus would not be able to support that. Take a look again. He says that currently this legislative landscape and timing are not optimal for our caucus to advance the measure effectively this session. According to the Iowa Republican Party, every Republican is staunchly pro-life from fertilization, or in this case, conception, to natural death. Now, if we hold nearly the supermajorities in both chambers in Iowa, if not now, when? Of course, we've got an open governor's race that we're not guaranteed to have a Republican governor this fall. So if Rob Sand or the other Democrat candidate gets in, or if we lose the House or Senate, it's very viable that we do not see a life at conception bill or any pro-life legislation whatsoever be passed into law until at least 2031. So it's very interesting that in this year that we are not guaranteed that the next cycle to be Republican, the Republicans cave. It's not optimal for our caucus. Why don't we take this vote and put those people who are not for this legislation, why don't we put those people on record so they can get voted out? If they will not stand for conception, I think it's incumbent upon the Republican leadership to let us know this. Now, here's Representative Steve Holt. He's the chairperson or chairman for the Judiciary Committee, where both bills, mind you, were assigned. Listen to what he has to say. And then I'll do a little bit of
their legislation, HF 2316. Additionally, they have accused leaders in the pro-life movement in Iowa, such as Maggie DeWitty, who has fought to protect unborn children for many years, of working for Satan and wanting to keep abortion legal simply because these pro-life leaders did not agree with the policy approaches in the abolitionist legislation. It is therefore important to add perspective as to why I cannot and will not support their approach, even though I share their ultimate objective of protecting all unborn children and ending abortion. So here's why HF 2316 does not have the support to advance. First, under this legislation, women who have an abortion would be subject to Iowa Code 707.2 first-degree murder charges.
What's the problem with that? Okay. If abortion is murder, then it stands to reason that whoever commits murder is guilty of homicide. I don't know why this is such a difficult topic, but let's keep going.
This approach is not supported by any pro-life group in the country. All
abolitionists, they're not pro-life all of a sudden? That method is not supported by pro-life leaders? Exactly who are we talking, who are we defining as pro-life? Because obviously the abolitionists are absolutely pro-life. They might take a very extreme approach to an all or nothing approach, which we can argue about the effectiveness of that. But to say that this approach is not at all approved or supported by any pro-life leaders, come on, Steve, you know better than that.
Legislation previously passed to protect life focused on loss of licensure and legal consequences for personnel who illegally perform abortion. While there are those women who publicly celebrate abortion, many young girls who have an abortion are frightened, without family support, intimidated, and in some cases abused, and misled by the abortion industry into making the decision to have an abortion.
Which this is fact. Of course, many young women who have an abortion are lied to. This is why the crisis pregnancy centers are of critical importance to the pro-life movement. Of course, I do not at all disagree with that statement, but his reasoning gets a little wonky here.
Under this legislation, young women already experiencing the mental anguish and lifetime consequences of having made the decision to abort their child would now be subject to arrest, trial, and imprisonment.
Yes, I don't see how this is a piece of logic that doesn't make sense to Steve. Is he proposing then, if we take that same logic, is he proposing that, say, the people who grow up in the bad parts of town that are underadvantaged and that have the pressures of not having a father in the home and that they weren't raised right and they get hanging around the wrong crowd and they need money and they go rob a liquor store? Or is he saying that now all of a sudden we shouldn't prosecute those because hey, they were just, I mean, they were just going through it. And how dare we put them in prison for shooting up a liquor store or a gas station because, man, they just needed some money. So the logic is skewed here. If a young woman commits murder, I don't care what her reasoning is. She is guilty of homicide and needs to be treated as such.
I cannot support such an approach, and neither can most of my fellow Republicans or pro-life leaders who have fought for 5 decades to protect life.
Again, I would like to ask him who those pro-life leaders are. We'll get into it a little bit because there's a very massive pro-life leader here in the state of Iowa that, Representative Dunwell works for him, and he's the one that canceled the subcommittee. So anyway, the pro-life leaders, I'd like to know who they were.
Second, the legislation as written would apply to in vitro fertilization, which leads to serious legal complications for fertility clinics. IVF could become far less accessible due to the legal complications created by this approach.
Yes, and it should. IVF should absolutely be made illegal. IVF is one of the leading causes of abortion in this country. Absolutely, IVF should be abolished. Keep listening.
Those of us who believe that life begins at conception cannot dismiss the profound importance of IVF access, which has been a blessing for so many Iowa families who now have wonderful children of their own.
Okay, so I absolutely agree that the children that are born of IVF are blessings, and I am so thrilled that they're here. But we can also simultaneously agree that many embryos are discarded because of IVF. Listen to some of these statistics. This source is on rmanetwork.com. It's a blog. As a rule of thumb, however, having about 10 to 12 mature eggs after egg retrieval, because not all eggs retrieved will be developed or mature enough to fertilize, is a good number of eggs and will give a woman a good chance of having at least one normal embryo, which gives a woman 65% chance of pregnancy. The above figure is 65 and not 100% because not all normal embryos will lead to pregnancy. So get this, and this is not a pro-life organization. Get what they said. So having several normal embryos available for transfer in case of failed transfer yields the best chances of success. In fact, RMA research has shown that women with 3 normal embryos have 95% chance of pregnancy. Now, let me ask my friend Representative Steve Holt a question here. What happens to the other 2 embryos if the first one is successful? What happens? They're discarded. That is abortion, my friend. So absolutely, in vitro fertilization needs to be outlawed. Let's keep listening to what he has to say here. I'll try to keep my comments a little bit shorter.
As a result of this technology, since passing the heartbeat bill twice to protect unborn children once a heartbeat is detected, House Republicans have passed numerous pieces of legislation that are now law to provide additional support that expectant mothers without a support system need in order to help them choose life as opposed to abortion.
And this is something I absolutely think we ought to do. I think that, the underprivileged people in lower income neighborhoods that don't have a dad should absolutely have youth programs. So I'm totally supportive of the Republicans getting behind support for young women in pregnancy crisis. Like, they were not intending to get pregnant. They were living a promiscuous life, but their choices are now very limited, and they have the prospect of having a baby without a father at present. Yeah, yeah, I'm totally supportive of having these organizations and such help these young women. I'm also supportive of making abortion illegal. So let's keep listening.
Supporting and loving expectant mothers, encouraging adoption by making the process less expensive and more accessible, and stopping any state funding for Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers, while funding family planning centers that offer support and alternatives to abortion.
Love it. Love it. I'm loving what Steve's got to say right now.
Have been our priorities, and they will continue to be. I believe this approach, as we work to end all abortion, is preferable to throwing young women in prison and destroying IVF access in Iowa.
He almost sounds like a Democrat now, doesn't he? He almost sounds like a pro-crime Democrat with this logic anyway. And he's not. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Steve. I was at the Capitol recently. I even talked to him. I said, "You're a fighter," and I appreciate that in him. When it comes to other topics, he's a massive fighter, and I love Steve Holt. I really do. On this, he's flat wrong, and he's beginning to sound like a pro-crime Democrat because of the logic that he is putting forward. Under his logic, we should allow young people to get away with crime also, like, because they're underprivileged, and we need to have a better support system and not make it illegal. Like, if we abstract out abortion out of this, all of a sudden we start seeing the illogical inconsistencies of my friend Representative Holt. All right.
This session, House Republicans will consider HSB 704, which takes aim at black market abortion drugs. I co-sponsored HF 2332, a life at conception bill that did not impact IVF or include a provision that would throw young women in jail. I assigned that bill to a subcommittee and wanted it to advance. However, Representative Dunwell canceled the sub because I think it became clear that this bill does not have the support of the full caucus at this time.
Again, why doesn't it have the support of the full caucus? And to my friend, Mr. Representative Steve Holt and Representative Dunwell, sometimes you need to put those people on record for a vote so they can get voted out. It's exactly how we got the education savings accounts passed here in the state. Exactly how we did it. We forced a vote. It got voted down. We voted all those people out, put new people in that would vote for us. So sometimes you just need to fight. And in this case, the Republicans need to grow a backbone.
We have work to do. And that's partly because of difficult issues that we must find consensus on, such as how to deal with IVF. And I think Representative Dunwell wants to
make it illegal.
Get the black market abortion bill done this year. That will be our primary focus on the life issue because we were asked by the pro-life community that it be a high priority. Obviously, life at conception would be the highest priority, but for the reasons I have already stated.
So he's making the black market chemical abortion stuff a high priority simply because pro-life leaders have asked him. But what about the abolition leaders? What about the people who have been up at the State House calling for the end of all abortions? What about them? They've said it's a priority. So obviously, Representative Holt is prioritizing which pro-life leader he's going to answer to. And on abortion, we should just simply say, abortion is murder, fight for the unborn.
We do not have the consensus we need at this time to move forward.
That's pathetic.
I wish the outcome was different, but the fight for life will continue.
The fight for life won't continue, apparently, because we're not forcing people to put a vote on it. So obviously the fight for life will not continue. We're laying down our arms and we're surrendering. That's exactly what we're doing here.
Now, I have had numerous conversations with abortion abolitionists who have come to our state to push for passage of their legislative approach of putting women in prison for abortion. Now, some of the conversations I've had were respectful and they were constructive, but others not so much. Unfortunately, some members of this movement accuse those who share their goal but reject their approach of working for the devil. You will likely see this reaction to my explanation here across social media with from some abolitionists. I will continue to try and have productive conversations when possible with members of this movement. As you know, like I said, they call me the devil, but I'll continue to have conversations. And of course, I will work with the pro-life community as a whole.
That's quite interesting that he would say he's going to try to have constructive conversations with the abolitionists, but he'll continue to work with the pro-life movement as a whole. Earlier in the conversation, though, he said that nobody supports the abolition. No pro-life leader supports the abolitionist perspective on this, and so he obviously already said that the abolitionists weren't pro-life, apparently. So his logic is making my brain hurt.
Continue to support legislation that supports expectant mothers in difficult circumstances. I will support life at conception legislation that does not destroy access to IVF for Iowa families. And I will continue to work with pro-life organizations and leaders whose efforts over decades have resulted in incredible success. The overturning of Roe versus Wade, the overturning of the Iowa Supreme Court decision that placed abortion rights in the Iowa Constitution, and the successful passage of the Iowa heartbeat bill that has resulted in life for countless children. I've spent a great deal of time in prayer over this issue. Some abolitionists tell me that I do not have enough faith in God, that we should just pass this legislation and God will take care of the rest. Yet, throughout the Bible and throughout human history, I see stories of Christian leaders having to deal with the political realities of their day and making strategic decisions over decades.
Hold on, that's not true. Obviously, yes, there is strategy when it comes to where we want to be, and Christian leaders making strategic decisions. But I'd like Mr. Holt to show me an example in the Bible where good Christians didn't fight for exactly what was right, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Did they do that? Did they make strategic decisions over many years? No. Did Esther? Did she make strategic decisions over many years? Again, no. Did Joseph make strategic decisions? No. So I'd like an example of who in the Bible actually made those strategic decisions, because obviously when it comes to murder, it's not a matter of strategy. It's a matter of stop murdering babies. That's fundamentally, that's where we have to be at. So no, I'm not for strategy over many, many decades. I'm not for that, and I don't think the Bible is either. Obviously, in like Josiah and some of the kings of the Old Testament, where God said, hey, they were a good king, they destroyed evil. They didn't do it over many years and just strategy. They destroyed evil. And I would like to also remind my Republican friends in Iowa that Esther did say, for such a time as this, and we always, we enjoy saying, oh, for such a time as this, maybe God put us here for such a time as this. Maybe God put Representative Holt as the chairman of that Judiciary committee for such a time as this. Maybe he put Representative Dunwell on that committee for such a time as this, and they decided to cave and not take this to a floor vote and force Republicans to stand behind their pro-life. You need to force those Republicans to stand behind exactly what they said on the campaign trail so that they can go home and face constituents. That's exactly what needs to happen here. Is it going to happen now? Nope. It's not going to happen. So this is, again, an example of caving.
To finally achieve an objective rooted in biblical principle. Through my prayer and reflection, as well as study, I am convinced that if we advance legislation that puts young women in jail for having an abortion and restricts access to IVF, the negative reaction from Iowans would destroy any ability to protect unborn children for years to come. and would even endanger the incredible gains we have made since Roe versus Wade was over.
Since when was it okay to not fight for life? When we first started fighting for life, when we first started doing the 6-week abortion ban and all this sort of stuff, people said that this was a losing topic. People said we'd lose election over this. And obviously we didn't. And now Representative Holt saying, man, if we go forward with this, we're going to undo everything that we've done. Is it God who did it, or is it us? And when he says through his personal study of what? Because it's definitely not the Bible that was studied. Because what he said is well, let me go back here and see if I can go back a little bit further and listen to it again.
That puts young women in jail for having an abortion, rooted in biblical principle. Through my prayer and reflection, as well as study, I am convinced that if we advance legislation that puts young women in jail for having an abortion,
so if we put murderers in jail
and restricts access to IVF
and stops discarding fertilized embryos, yep,
the negative reaction from Iowans would destroy any ability to protect unborn children for years to come.
Well, guess what's not happening right now? Protecting the unborn. Because the subcommittee just got canceled. So that's what's not happening right now.
And would even endanger the incredible gains we have made since Roe versus Wade was overturned. In the fight.
What gains was that exactly? Yep, 6-week heartbeat bill. Okay, wonderful. They're just going over, where's the baby boom that was supposed to happen because abortions just plummeted? I don't see a baby boom in the state of Iowa right now. Like, what gains are we actually talking about? Because if you look at numbers, abortions are actually up. So exactly what gains are we talking about?
To stop abortion and protect unborn children, I will not support legislation that imprisons young women or limits access to IVF for Iowa families.
Well, you heard it here. Well, on his Facebook page, you can go out there and see this too, but he won't support legislation that does that. And he'll try to work with abolitionists because they're not very pro-life. So he can't support their methods. He can't support putting murderers in jail. Can't support that. Man, that's tough. That's tough. That's sad. It's quite frankly discouraging as well.
Because I believe this approach will result in monumental loss for the pro-life effort that will lead to more abortions, not less.
Guess what's going to lead to more abortions? Not fighting for having this bill passed of Life at Conception Act. He's talking a big game about being so defensive or defending life. It's his Judiciary committee that could pass this bill. Either bill. It's his Judiciary committee that canceled their subcommittee.
I will continue to support legislation that encourages life, not death, and all of us that believe that life should be protected from conception to natural death must work to foster a culture of life through education, through prayer, and through revival. For Freedom Watch, I'm State Representative Stephen Holt.
All right. What'd you think of that? Let me know in the comments because that's quite an interesting take on it all. He'll continue to support, but he won't support putting murderers in jail, and he won't support stopping the potentially 2 abortions for every 1 successful IVF session. And other stats have said that this is even far higher than what the stats are that I've read. So, I mean, go look that up yourself. It's quite interesting. So let me know in the comments. Now, here's another piece that's quite interesting for me. Take a look at who supported the different bills in the state. So I'm going to put up here, this is House File, let's see here, let me back up. This is House File 2316. This is the abolition bill. What I'm going to show you here is on the Iowa Legislative website, you could see exactly which lobbyist is for or against or undecided for specific bills. So in this case, I want you to take a look here. And it's quite interesting when you compare the pro-life leaders that are for one and against the other. So take a look here. So obviously you've got Iowa Baptists for Biblical Values. You've got the Iowa abolitionists that are for it. You've got several people that are against it. The atheists are against it. Iowa Right for Life is for it. Valor Iowa is for it. You got some people that withdrew and then redid it. So Iowa abolitionists are for it officially, not withdrawn. So that's quite interesting. I find the people or the lobbyist groups, the pro-life leaders who have came out for this was quite interesting. Now, keep in mind, both of these bills were filed on February 6th. So what you're about to see here is the House File 2332, which is the subcommittee that just got canceled, that doesn't have any ramifications for the mom, does not hinder in vitro fertilization, so is something that, according to Representative Holt's logic, should be very much defended. That, of course, isn't now. So let me pull this up and take a look here. So if we go through this, let me back this recording up. So this is for House File 2332. There's a bunch of people against it, which take a look at this. So there's the Episcopal people that they're opposed to it. You've got Iowa Right for Life says, yes, we're for it. Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition. Well, now this wasn't a bill, or this wasn't a lobbyist group. Jeff Pitts, he didn't register on the other bill, but he registered for on this bill. Well, that's quite interesting. And obviously you see here the Iowa abolitionists are against it. And the biggest reason why for the logic for abolitionist is that basically it's an all or nothing. It's a, we must state righteousness the entirety of this fight, and any sort of compromise with any lesser of two evils. So for instance, if it's a 20-week abortion ban versus a full abortion ban, they're going to take full abortion ban every time and vote against the 20-week abortion ban. You can agree or disagree with that logic, but that's what their logic is. So let's keep looking. Iowa Medical Society's against it. Okay, there we go. We've got Iowa Baptists for Biblical Values again. They're for it. The atheists, again, are against it. They're going to be against everything. So Iowa Right to Life Committee, Valor Iowa. Oh, wait a minute. Pulse Life Advocates. That wasn't over on the other one. That wasn't on the other lobbyist one. So now we have Maggie DeWitty with Pulse Life Advocates registering for on House File 2332, but not on the other one. And the Iowa Right to Life and such, they did file on the other one, and they were for it. So Representative Holt's logic saying that no pro-life leaders are for that legislation, well, that's just obviously not true. The Iowa Baptist for Biblical Values with Pastor Brad Cranston, he's for it. Is he not a pro-life leader? I mean, he's on this one as well. So One Iowa, League of Women Voters, they're against everything. Well, now look at this. So take a look here. This is the family leader with Ryan Ben, Danny Carroll, Chuck Hurley, and Josiah Olson. Now, the family leader did not support the other bill. The reason that's quite interesting is because John Dunwell, Representative Dunwell, works for the family leader. So now we have the family leader, which is, if for those not familiar with Iowa, the family leader is a group that is very influential in Iowa politics. They take, I would say, kind of take a backseat approach where they're not out in the news a whole lot. They're not putting their face out in public a whole lot, but they are very instrumental, and they have done a lot of good in this state. I have a tremendous amount of respect for both Danny Carroll and Chuck Hurley. They're phenomenal men, but it's interesting to me that they don't support the other bill, but they support this bill. You would think if the logic was that we're just going to support any pro-life legislation, then, I mean, we can disagree or agree with the merit of that, but that's not their logic. They didn't sign on to the other bill. So obviously they're saying one bill is good, one bill is not. And oftentimes with lobbyist groups, and pardon my dog, he's outside barking at something, but so if you can hear that, sorry. A lot of times with lobbyist groups, they will register undecided if they want an amendment or something. So I would have kind of expected the family leader to register undecided for the previous bill, but they didn't. So why didn't they? Well, maybe because their boy, John Dunwell, was the chairman on the subcommittee that canceled it. Canceled the subcommittee for life at conception, House File 2332. So it's quite interesting to me how the Iowa Republicans have caved on this. I mean, it's blatantly obvious to anybody with eyes. So we have to keep in mind that abortion is murder. And for years, pro-life Republicans have been telling us this. But when the rubber meets the road, the majority don't really want to actually put their name to such a legal statement with such legal ramifications as putting murderers in jail. Is abortion murder? If abortion is murder, you have to, logically, in order to be consistent logically, you have to say then murderers should be in jail, period. So now here's another thing to keep in mind is that funnel week is this week. So at the end of this week, February, whatever it is, the 20th, I believe. Anyway, Friday or Thursday is the end of funnel week. So that means that the bills have to get out of that chamber's committee in order to still be considered for floor debate. So the Senate committees have to approve all of the bills out of the Senate committees, and the House committees have to approve the bills coming out of the House committees. So you have two funnel weeks in the state of Iowa. The first funnel week is this week. The second funnel week is later on, where then essentially anything that came out of the House, the Senate then would have to approve it in their committees and get it out of their committees. So it's just a way procedurally to limit down the things that are going to be focused on in the legislative session. So guess what's not going to be focused on? Life at conception. And according to Representative Dunwell, which, again, I'll pull it up for you here, that he's wanting to crack down on the dangerous black market flow of abortion pills into our state. Well, I think that's an admirable approach. I do. I think that, cracking down on that is very important. But I also think, and every Republican knows this, I also think we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. We can do both. Obviously, there's a ton of bills. If you go out to the Iowa legislative website, there's a ton of bills out there. But nope, we don't have life at conception. It's sad. It's disturbing. It's disgusting. My opinion is that the only reason that House File 2332 was filed is because the abolitionist came to the state of Iowa. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. But I think that public pressure on life bills is what got that life bill even sponsored to begin with. But alas, this is our condition of the state. Republicans, when we have control, we don't actually fight. And there's some times that even if there's a 1% chance of winning, you fight. And basically what the Iowa Republicans have said is, for lack of a better term, screw the babies. Those babies that are going to get killed because we didn't have approval in our caucus. And I'll be honest about this too. Representative Holt and Representative Dunwell might not appreciate this, but it's the truth. They are the face of this movement now. They are the face of the anti-pro-life movement in the Republican Party. And I don't think they intended to be. I really don't. I think the best of them in that. I wouldn't think evil of them at all in that capacity. But the reality is that that's where they've put themselves. So if you think of, well, why don't we have life at conception? Well, Steve Holt, John Dunwell, those two men. And they will definitely say, and they would have right to say, well, we didn't have approval in our caucus. If we would have taken it out of committee, if we would have approved it in subcommittee, approved it in the full committee, which it probably would have gotten approved, took it to the House floor, and the House decided to vote against it, which likely would have been the outcome. Well, they could at least say, we did our best. Now, they're the ones that are stopping the life at conception. So I would recommend reach out to Representative Holt, reach out to Representative Dunwell, let them know what you think about this, and leave your notes in the or leave your thoughts in the comments below here about what's the next steps for Iowa. We need to put people in that will fight. We need to put we need to have solid Christians running. This is exactly why Christians need to be involved in politics, is because we need solid Christians that will basically put themselves out there and understand that they might not win the next election, but they fought. And at the end of the day, we need to stand account to God for our own actions. We need to pray for our state. When, just as a personal story, when I told my wife about what had happened and how the subcommittee, because I was planning on speaking this morning, and when I told my wife last night, I was on Facebook and saw that the Iowa Standard had put out that the bill was canceled, or the subcommittee, and I went out, and sure enough, it was. I told my wife, and anyway, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying this. I walked in on her in the bedroom, and she was kneeling beside the bed to pray for the state. I think that's the right response. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. We need to pray for our state, pray for our leaders, pray that they have boldness to do what the Bible commands. And at the end of the day, we need to get involved as well. Get involved in your local politics. Get involved. Let your voice be heard at your committee meetings at the different counties that you're in. Like, get involved. And if you would like help getting involved, reach out to me. I will gladly give you information to help you get involved. So anyway, with that, thank you for listening. Again, leave your comments below what you think. Please share this with others. I think that the only way that we can win this fight is if we share this message and let other people know exactly what's going on in our state. So with that, God bless, and we'll see you in the next time.